So, moving on, what is the biggest misconception you think people have about long-term EV ownership?
I think people feel like they're going to have to replace the battery. Like that's like something that's going to happen. If you buy an EV, you're going to have to face this huge battery replacement charge at some point. Which is like when you buy a car, I guess, and you want to keep it for a long time. For myself speaking, like when I bought this Ford, for instance, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, at some point, I'm going to have to rebuild this engine or have it rebuilt. And that's going to be like $3,000 or something. I remember doing that kind of math back in the day, and I think people do that same kind of thing with batteries. But you know, as we've seen now in different studies, the batteries are holding up like a lot longer than we thought. It's kind of a fair thing to imagine though, because like some of the early batteries, like the Leaf batteries, especially
Hmm.
the first generation Leaf batteries, like sucked,
Yes.
and they degraded way faster than they ought to have. And I think it really started a lot of this whole thing about batteries, wearing out and having to be replaced. And then of course there was also like it's new industry, so like a lot of the early batteries in Tesla Model S, had to be fair amount had to be replaced. I'm not sure what the exact average is, but that doesn't happen nearly as often now. But if you were in like the Tesla forums, you'd hear about people having to have their motors or their batteries replaced pretty regularly. You'd hear about it. Not that they'd have to replace them regularly, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about before. Even when you look at kind of more modern, the statistic is way percentage of battery failures is just way lower
Yeah.
than it has, ever has been or whatever. But also when you look at kind of pricing of these battery packs now, it's not that much different than what you're going to pay for basically any major component on a modern gas vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at dealership pricing for an engine block or a transmission or whatever, it's pretty similar in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, I agree. That's a pretty big misconception that we still kind of see out there. And it's always, everyone's first argument for why you shouldn't get an EV is like, oh, well, in 10 years. I was like, A, probably not. B, any car that you have for 10 years is going to have some sort of major, most likely. And if it doesn't, you should be budgeting for when it does eventually
Yes.
happen.